Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Board of Selectmen meeting of November 4th. It's a little after 7, and this is a regular scheduled meeting. The first item on the agenda is a public hearing to obtain public comment on the extension of State Street sidewalk to the intersection with Little Meadow Road and State Street. Before we begin, I just want to kind of give you the ground rules for a public hearing. We will have a presentation by our engineer, Jim Portley, explaining the project based on the petition we received. Then we'll open it up to the audience for questions. And then after the question period, we'll have anyone speak who's in favor of the project. And then after that, anyone who's opposed to the project. Some of you have asked me, call my office, why we were having a public hearing. According to our one of our ordinance, which is Town Ordinance 24-6A, any 6 people, or property owners, I should say, who file a petition, this has to be 6 according to the ordinance, and they do not have to be property owners abutting the proposed sidewalk, can have a public hearing, and the Board of Selectmen are empowered to do so. So that's why we're here tonight. What we'll do is elicit comments, and after the public hearing, the Board of Selectmen will, not at this meeting, will then take those comments and review them on their own, and on a further agenda, we will then be discussing the project. If we decide to go ahead with the project, we will instruct the engineering department to include it in their next budget, which will be the 2015 budget. Actually starts July 1, 2014. And then we will review it as an item in their budget come this December, actually January, excuse me. And then it becomes part of the town budget should we include it in there. Okay? So with that, I'll start off with Jim Portley, town engineer. Oh, by the way, when you come before the microphone, for the record, not you, Jim, we know. Please give us your address and your name. Thank you. Okay, Jim. Thank you.
Good evening. Hello, everybody. I made about 20 copies, I don't know how many people will be here, of the limits of the sidewalk that has been petitioned for this, and the subject of our discussion this evening. Back in July, Jennifer Mullet came to me asking what was the procedure, could the town extend the sidewalk up from its present limit on State Street down near the elderly housing project, extend it all the way up to the intersection of Golden Hill, past Tupelo, up near Nut Plains Road, further up State Street. And in a conversation we had, I told her the process that would be followed using the town ordinance process, whereby if people want a sidewalk extension, they have to petition the Board of Selectmen, and that's the reason we're here tonight. There was a series of other questions that Jennifer brought to me regarding the subject. I've passed out the mapping of the limits of that sidewalk. I also gave Jennifer a copy of the town transportation plan that was produced in 2003, which talked about the extension of sidewalks to give some kind of background to the subject, so that there would be a full discussion on how this should go, and that this had been discussed before, that their sidewalks was part of the overall town's transportation plan. The extension of those sidewalks were part of a whole section 5 of this report that talked about sidewalks and pathways, drawing a distinction between a sidewalk and a pathway, and the big distinction being that pathways you wouldn't have to clear the snow and ice off, and sidewalks you would. Sidewalks you can't ride a bicycle on, but you can on a pathway. So we had some discussions like that. And I told her that the process would be that she would have to submit a petition, that there was no money in this year's budget to do any sidewalk work, but if this petition was submitted to the Board of Selectmen, it would then go through the process. If acceptable, then it would go through the budgetary process and so forth. So that's why we're here tonight. The petition was submitted, the Board of Selectmen scheduled this meeting, and here we are to hear comments pro and con for the sidewalk. There's been no real design work done on this sidewalk, whether it be the east side of the road or the west side of the road. I've looked at both sides of that road from where it terminates now, near the elderly housing project. I feel it could go either side. It doesn't have to go one side or the other. There's gonna be good things about both sides, and there's gonna be bad things about both sides. That would be a design consideration that would be taken up later on. We'd have to do survey work. There would be costs associated with all the pros and cons. But I think that's the next step, if we should get to that point. But I just want, there is no reason why we couldn't go either the east side or the west side to achieve what has been requested. So, that being said,
Okay. Jim, why don't
There
you
you go.
stay there?
okay,
Are there any questions from the public on this project?
Oh, yes.
Yes, please come up here.
Is this just a general question?
General question, yeah, okay.
Hi, I'm Sam Garrett's, 290 North River Street. So first of all, I've been a beneficiary of some really nice sidewalks around us, but one of the question I had was, what is the annual budget within Guilford for sidewalks, and how does that compare to our neighboring communities such as Branford and Madison?
this year our budget is $60,000, I believe. I really don't know. I know Madison doesn't have much of a sidewalk program at all. Branford does have a program, but I don't know how well it's funded.
Okay, that was just a question I came here with.
Okay, good. Any other questions from the public? Yes, sir. No?
This is Michael Mallison, 423 State Street, Guilford. Yeah, I was wondering about the sidewalk because I got a lot of frontage, almost 200 foot of frontage. And if I have to maintain it, I'm a senior. Between snow, and there's only 2 pedestrians that use it every day. I see one guy walking from Route 80 down to town, big wide, pick up bottles, one side, the other side. Helps me out
We
because
see 'em
I,
all.
oh, you see him, man? And if he put a sidewalk in, I figured he'd pick up broken glass.
Okay, excuse me, sir, this is just questions, you can make your comments after.
all right.
Okay. Do you have any questions on the presentation?
Yeah, what about street lighting, street lights, gotta be involved too?
That was not requested, and
Oh,
it's not contemplated at this point.
Oh,
Okay, okay. I invite you to come up after and make your statement, okay? Anyone else have any questions? Does the board have any questions?
Yeah, so
Cindy?
at this point, are you looking at a sidewalk versus a pathway?
I think that would come out of the discussions tonight, the direction of the Board of Selectmen. I think if a big concern is of the neighbors who live along that way, whether it's side, is that snow removal would be a real headache or
Yeah.
an issue for folks. Possibly the way to avoid that is to classify it as a pathway.
And is the structure the same as a pathway as a sidewalk, or it's just how it's
I
classified?
think it's just a classification.
Okay.
We're
And-
talking about, for example, the Shoreline Greenway Trail. That pretty much is gonna be a sidewalk. It's gonna be wider. It's gonna be 8 to 10 feet based on what they would like to see, but if you're walking on it, you're gonna see basically the same thing. You're gonna see a
But-
hard surface that's
Yeah.
gonna,
But is a
always.
pathway concrete? I mean,
can be anything. It can be. We're contemplating on Route 1 that what they would like to see is an asphalt pathway, but with a chip seal surface with the Stony Creek granite, so it would have a pleasant appearance, as opposed to just the black or
The white.
or a white concrete. I think those decisions are made based on people's input. The nice thing about a pathway is that you can ride bicycles. I think people who have talked about having a sidewalk, they anticipate their kids being able to ride downtown on the sidewalk. And the chief will tell you that by state law, you're not supposed to be riding a bicycle on a sidewalk. So if you'd classify it as a pathway of get downtown, then it would be more suitable for that kind of
What
purpose.
about maintenance?
What about me
People
in
are
terms
not
of snow?
required to maintain a pathway?
It's by ordinance, we say we have to maintain a sidewalk. Doesn't say anything about a pathway.
But with
I
this,
mean, it's a kind of a tricky way to do it.
well, I have two questions. One goes back to the pathway versus a sidewalk. If it's a pathway, if it's the physically same as the sidewalk, but you don't allow bikes on a sidewalk, but you allow on a pathway, aren't there the same issues?
Maybe the town would like to talk about that. I see
So I'm
it,
assuming it's safety, right, chief?
It's, as far as the state statute goes, it's sidewalks. As far as I'm concerned legally, there's no distinction between a sidewalk and a pathway. I mean, the pathways, I think, are normally going through trails and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But how are you distinct between a sidewalk and a pathway? If we're trying to get pedestrians off the street,
Right.
then why would we call it a pathway? Because now they don't have to maintain them, according to Jim. And then people would be back on the street, walking in the street.
Right.
This is probably gonna be a discussion for when and if we decide in a budget
Yes.
issue and all of those
Right,
kinds of
right.
things.
Right.
I mean, that's
No, I
something-
know.
and that's the way of getting all the issues out onto the table.
Yeah.
I mean, there's gonna be the reaction of people against maintaining a sidewalk. Well, this is one way that I've heard of getting around that issue. Get adopted.
Getting around something.
And the
Yeah,
other
I was gonna
question I
ask you,
have
John,
for you
yeah.
is
I
legally.
just chime in that I haven't researched that. and
You have or have?
My initial reaction is I really want to research that.
Yeah.
Because I think that might be problematic, that's all.
And that would be research that we would need prior to any decision.
for those,
By the way, this is,
Somehow
yeah.
it's-
Okay.
this is Pam Millman, our in-house counsel, she's our lawyer. So,
That there be somehow some kind of distinction, like you could get around this just by calling it a pathway. You know, I really want to look at that.
Okay.
And the other question I have when you're looking at it, Pam, is the legality of negligence on a pathway versus sidewalk.
Right.
Okay, so that's an issue about who's responsible.
And as I say, I'm skeptical in that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the-
Concept, actually.
so
Why would we-
we're not discussing whether it's a pathway or a sidewalk here, we're just discussing the merits of a sidewalk. Okay? Any further discussion? Any further questions, sorry. All right, we'll go into the comment phase, and that would be, first of all, anyone who is in favor of proceeding with this project. Please come up and state your name and address, please. Thank you, James.
You're welcome.
Well, hello, I'm Jennifer Mullet. I live at 146 Tupelo Lane. I am the person who brought forth the petition. Tonight, as I was driving home at 4:55 and the sun was going down and it was getting dark, and I was driving particularly on this section that we're talking about expanding the sidewalk for, there was a gentleman walking up the side of the road in a dark jacket, dark hat, and on the wrong side of the road, and you could barely see him. And for me, that reinforces why my husband and I and our neighbors that signed the petition are bringing forward this issue proactively before a serious accident occurs on State Street. As a driver, it's difficult at times to see pedestrians, and as a pedestrian, because I do walk it, it is hard to sometimes remove yourself from the path of cars. If you add a bicyclist or two, because I know they can't be on the sidewalks, they can only be on the road, with pedestrians and cars and distracted drivers, you really have a disaster waiting to happen. The petition that we're putting forward was signed by over 45 households. I just wanted to make that point because it was 45 property owners that signed it, which, as was mentioned before, that's well over the 6 signatures that are required to call a public hearing. So I think that demonstrates the demand for the sidewalk in our area. We estimate that there's at least 50 children in the combined areas of Tupelo Lane, State Street, Oxbow, Nut Plains West, and Golden Hill neighborhoods. Some of those kids are already walking this stretch of road, and they don't always do it safely. They walk on the wrong side of the road. They walk with headphones in their ears. Having a sidewalk in this location would give them safe access to schools, particularly Adams, which is in the neighborhood center's map in the Guilford's transportation plan. It would give them access to the library, to community events on the green, and to local jobs. Not to mention that it gives them the added benefit of getting some exercise. I just wanted to say that, you know, according to the town regulations, the role of the Board of Selectmen is that they're charged with determining whether or not public necessity or convenience demands that a sidewalk be constructed. And we understand that there are some concerns. We hope that they can be accommodated, but really, we feel that the safety of our residents as motorists, as bicyclists, as pedestrians, and the safety of our children really constitute a public necessity. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you for taking the time to hear our petition. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next to speak in favor of it? Mr. Gill.
Since apparently no one else is, this is Sid Gale, 250 Flag Marsh Road. Since no one else is apparently speaking in favor of it, I thought it was a strategic place for me to speak between the favors and the opposed. I'm here in the spirit of the coming season, in the capacity of the ghost of Transportation Planning Committees past. I'm glad that this was brought forward because it's long overdue, but I want to make clear for the Board of Selectmen's benefit particularly what it was that we endeavored to accomplish in Section 5 of the Transportation Plan and what needs to be accomplished before you consider proposals such as this. We were asked to deal with the issue of making Guilford's neighborhoods more walkable, and that was essentially a blank piece of paper. And what Section 5, and particularly the neighborhood centers piece of that has been referred to, does is it presents to you a concept that needs to be fleshed out and has yet to be fleshed out. What that needs, in my view, is a strategy for how we go about expanding sidewalks, and they will become more desirable, sidewalks, pathways, however you choose to call them, going forward. Certainly as a result of this proposal. What are your standards for selecting among competing priorities? And what are the priorities that are competing? And in fact, this is coming before you, but it's not the only issue that should be addressed according to what was laid out in the plan. I can think of at least 3 priorities that might compete with this for precious funds. And let's recognize that, as Mr. Portley indicated, you have a budget of $60,000 this year for sidewalks. If you use the numbers that Jim gave us in 2003, the cost of this sidewalk would be $60,000 to $100,000. So there's a need to understand priorities, and they do exist in addition and in competition with this one. They just haven't been addressed in the 10 years since this document has been proposed. This specific proposal does meet many of the criteria that I would use to say, is it an appropriate project for consideration? Does it go to a place that's significant? Yes, it connects to an existing sidewalk and to a neighborhood facility, Adams School. Does it seem to serve an adequate number of people to justify it? Yes. Is it worth the cost that will be necessary? That I leave to your judgment. Are there safety issues that would give it greater priority? Well, according to the police statistics for the 4 years preceding our plan, there were 13 accidents on State Street. That's, I presume, the entirety of State Street, and probably more of them were toward the Route 1 area. So it doesn't sound like there is a major safety problem, but having lived on Nut Plains Road and walked it, I can appreciate why the neighbors would want to have a pathway there. I can list at your request the 3 areas that I consider higher priorities in this project at your discretion. One thing I do agree with the petitioners on is that the cost of pathways or sidewalks should be borne by the town and not shared with the abutting property owners. because it forces them to bear an undue burden of a cost for which they don't have comparable benefit, and that benefit is shared by a number of people who are not similarly assessed. We should look at the funding of sidewalks and pathways in the same manner we look at the funding of roads. I would like to see.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Did the plan address, when you talk about funding, maintenance?
No, it did
No,
not.
because it's a legal issue. That's the, yeah. It's
So we're just-
legally,
Like
an
every other
ordinance is-
sidewalk in town?
yeah, I didn't want to, I figured Pam could answer that officially, but yeah.
Okay.
I would offer one alternative to a sidewalk or a pathway, and it has a precedent in what Jim Portley did on Flag Marsh Road when he reconstructed that. I asked him for a pathway at that time, and he told me it wasn't in budget, and that a number of the neighbors would not support it. So I said, well, at the very least, when you reconstruct the road, would you make sure that the grassed areas on the side are level and unobstructed so that people can walk on a surface, and that they have unobstructed access off the road where they need to, which was not the case with the Deer Country Lane that preceded the reconstruction. And he did that, and I invite both the board and the neighbors to this petition to take a look at Flag Marsh Road and see what he has done. But please drive slowly when you come. I mean, he created a road that is more efficient, that is safer for pedestrians. Asked him to throw a few trees in to soften it and replace all that he had to take down, and he did that. And I think what we have here is a good example of how one of our country roads, notable for being cow paths that were paved over with lousy sight lines, can be turned into something that is safe for everybody. And that might be a less costly alternative and one that is more broadly applicable and should be considered as a potential third option to pathways and sidewalks. So I thank you for your time and
Good, thank you.
consideration.
Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, what were the other roads? that
What
you
were the
saying?
priorities?
Question.
You ask.
What were the other roads
Priorities.
you meant, the
The
priorities
three
that you were saying?
priorities?
Were they in the report? Because I was,
Two of them were. Two of them were. One of them is the fact that on Route 1 between exit 59 and Route 77 and on Boston Street, we still have a number of areas where sidewalks have yet to be completed, and that should be a priority in the center of
That's
town to
connecting.
complete those, correct.
Connecting
see, it's always
sidewalks.
easy to do when you're doing it from scratch or you're doing it like that construction flag march, because the topography in this area, I mean, I guess you could do it, I just.
Yeah, but
be
those areas
harder.
that he's talking about are connecting to.
No, those, yeah, but I'm
Right,
thinking
I
what
mean,
his earlier comment about.
But there are
flag
some
march.
bizarre connections.
Well, we would require property owners to build a piece in front of theirs, and the next piece
And
probably
that's a
never got
part of the
developed.
problem.
Right.
The system has been too opportunistic up to now, such as the extension on River Street that was tied to the Walgreens project. Either we have a transportation system or we don't. And what sidewalks increasingly, I think, are being recognized as a growing important part of the transportation system. The second option would be, and this one is time sensitive, in recommendation 1.11 of the report, we recognize the opportunity to create a road and/or sidewalk connecting Union Street to Route 1 in the area of the Fonticello's property, identified potentially as the Patriot Medical Center. If that is still open in negotiations of that plot, that should be actively pursued because it has a major potential over time for relieving the congestion that exists at two choke points at Route 1 and State Street and at Goose Lane. By allowing a third area for traffic to move through and breaking up that huge block to make it a walkable area from the South Union Street area. The third option should have been on the map of neighborhood centers, wasn't important at the time, but it will be in the future for economic development. And that is the area on Route 1 West between Guilford, Texaco and Gatehouse, which is going to see greater density of development, which could improve, I think, for economic development purposes with some streetscaping of which sidewalks ought to be a part. And it too has adjoining areas nearby of residents that would benefit from being able to walk safely on that expansive road, which might have greater commercial services over time. That's not an immediate priority like Patriot Medical Center is, but it should be there in your mix of considerations as you're debating how to spend limited town funds among the options that are available.
Okay, thank you. I will add that when we have these projects go before planning and zoning, that's an ideal opportunity to make that part of the site plan. And
I
have
wonder
the-
if they're-
the, And have the developer weigh in on that and be part of it. I don't need your comment now, I just make it a general statement on that. Okay,
Right, but if I may,
go ahead.
it'll be greater than just a given developer, since development will not occur in unison, and that's where streetscaping and planning and budgeting by the town creates a more usable system sooner. Thank you.
But in the past, we have done that with other developers.
Right.
Okay. All right, anybody else wish to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Duffy Mudry. I live at 70 Oxbow Lane. I don't have much to say more than what Jen Mullett said. I just wanted to reiterate how many kids are in the area, and especially the other day when I was driving, the whole cross-country team from Adams, usually they do hills on Oxbow Lane, so they use that pathway constantly. So my car was just stopped while the whole team is, going up State Street and onto my road. And I just was thinking how important this is, because they would really, it's scary because cars come and, people are texting or using their phone when they shouldn't be. We can't really depend on good drivers all the time. And that road is, dangerous. I grew up in Guilford, and I remember a really terrible accident years ago on State Street, and I think they widened the road then. But it's a dangerous stretch of road, and I do feel that the kids and pedestrians and adults, everyone would really benefit from being able to just walk to town. There's so much. Our town center is there's nothing like it. There's no other town center in the state that's as beautiful and as accommodating as the Guilford Green, and it'd be so nice for all these families to be able to walk to town. It's a mile from my house. It's not far, and it's just, I won't do it with my kids. I won't do it. But so just wanted to reiterate.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Who else would like to address the board in favor? Yes, ma'am?
So I'm Serena Spudich, and I live at 49 Oxbow Lane. And I'm here with a lot of other parents for exactly the same reason. We have an 8th grader who goes to Adams, and I feel very fortunate to live in a town that I feel safe with my kids walking around after school, walking from Adams to the Green, going to the library. But the days that she wants to walk home after school because she misses a bus or has an after-school activity, I've been really concerned about that, and I've actually asked her to walk on the neighbor's property all the way up the street, to never walk on the street, because I'm really afraid when I drive that I'm going to see her. So I have a firsthand sort of same opinion that I think for the safety of our kids, and I think for the kids who want to have the sort of freedom they can have in a town like Guilford to be able to enjoy that by walking. But the other thing that struck me as I've heard the other community members talking is that I think an added benefit for the neighborhood, and I think this may be something to think about for the homeowners who would have an added responsibility having to deal with the sidewalk, is really the increasing property value of the neighborhood when you have walkability. So when we moved here 3 years ago to Guilford from out of town, and really the main scope of the places we were looking at and highly considering were places where we could walk to the town. In the end, we loved the Oxbow Lane street so much and the neighborhood so much, and sort of felt that we could get away with walking on the side of the street. We ended up buying the house after looking for a long time. But I do think that for the neighbors who own property in that area and who would have to have the added responsibility of having to take care of a sidewalk, there would be a benefit in terms of resale values and kind of having that community be more attractive, given it is only a mile from the Green. That's my main comment.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Who would like to be next? Sam?
Sam Garrett's 290 North River Street. So I don't actually live in the neighborhood that's being affected, but I just wanted to speak out as a strong advocate for sidewalks. I grew up in a small town in southern Ohio where we had sidewalks on all sides of all streets, and so as a kid I could walk literally from my house to every school I went to to the library, downtown, etc. And I know that Guilford doesn't have quite that network of sidewalks, but I recognize how liberating it is for both children and adults who don't feel like driving all the time to be able to get from point A to point B just by walking down the street. And I'd also point out that you notice a lot of things about the town that are really special by walking rather than by whizzing through town. So I just wanted to bring up a couple points that have already been touched on. One is that, there was this incident on Tanner Marsh a couple years ago where people walking along the road were hit. I think you might remember this. And I think that the section road we're talking about looks very similar to that. And I think that we're maybe one tragedy away from realizing how many people are taking advantage of proximity to town without being able to travel safely to town. And State Street in particular is really close. I mean, I know people who live on Oxbow Lane who walk down to commute via train. So they're walking all the way from that area through town and all the way down to the train station. The other thing is, living in a house that has a sidewalk, I do know that every time there's a big snowstorm, I have some responsibility in front of me. But I also think that there's a side of that civic responsibility that makes you feel really good. You and the neighbors all get out there. After the big snowstorm this year, we all got out there and kind of had a snow shoveling party. Even though there probably weren't that many people who used the sidewalk, I'm sure whoever did really appreciated the fact that we'd gone to the trouble of clearing it so you could walk down North River Street towards the green, go get your groceries. You didn't have to get in your car. And I also would definitely agree that I think there's a cost benefit analysis to be done, that the property values of houses that have walkable access to the green, clearly you see it every time you see a house advertised, walk to the green, close to the green. And I think when you visit a house like that, when you're looking around and you realize, wow, I can actually live here and just go out my front door and walk to this wonderful green, I think that adds a significant amount to the value of the house. And so, even though it may mean more responsibility for the property owners who are now gaining a sidewalk to take care of, I think that'll be more than repaid by the increased property value when it comes time to sell. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Catherine Denauer. I live at 124 Tupelo Lane. Basically, I just want to affirm the points that I've heard, especially the safety issues. When I mentioned to my kids tonight that I was coming here, they said, why do you even need to talk about this? This should be a done deal. But of course, it's not that simple. We moved here 8 years ago from Silver Spring, Maryland. And when we moved here, when we were looking at houses 9 years ago, one of the things on my list for the realtor was a neighborhood with sidewalks. And as we started to drive through and look at houses, I quickly had to take that off the list because it became apparent that most neighborhoods in Guilford don't have sidewalks. And that's just an unfortunate reality of how the town sort of grew up. And in the bigger scheme of things, much of the United States has grown up around cars, basically, in the last year. And our towns are basically, and our houses and everything are built around our cars. Where are the parking lots? Where can we, how many garages do we have? And the idea is we built roads, but we unfortunately didn't build sidewalks, and we didn't take the pedestrians into account. We basically took the cars into account. So, of course, I agree with the safety issues because I'm one of those families that has 3 kids that have not been willing to walk to the green and walk to town. My son is walking home from Adams. It makes me a little bit nervous, but I hope for the best every day that he doesn't get hit. But I also want to sort of put it in the bigger picture as far as public health, and it's good to hear that Guilford has funding to work on sidewalks over time, because I think we really as a town need to be much more proactive from a public health perspective, that we need sidewalks for good health. And it also helps build communities. It's how people interact. You don't interact just driving in your car around town. You interact by being out and about and seeing your neighbors and being able to get to things on foot. We obviously know there's an obesity epidemic in this country. I realize that this stretch of sidewalk is not going to cause that obesity epidemic to go away, but I come to you as a physician who practices pediatric endocrinology. I see obese kids in my clinics every week, and that's not really even my focus in pediatric endocrine. I focus on kids with thyroid disorders, but many come to me with who are overweight, and it's a difficult problem, but every time I see kids in clinic, I'm always saying to them, add steps to your day, get out and walk, use the stairs. And we didn't have to say that, I think, to people 20, 25 years ago. We did just walk and take the stairs and do those sorts of things. So I would encourage you to think about the public health side of it. And, that the cost of the sidewalk is one thing, but I think it has other benefits in other ways in terms of public health perhaps decreased emissions if we're not driving our cars as much. I mean, the little things that I think end up adding up over time. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? I don't see anybody else, okay. We'll now ask for any comments that are opposed to the sidewalks.
My name is Julius Fries of 50 Tupelo Lane. First, I want to thank the Selectmen for the time that you spend for this town, and I wish you all good luck tomorrow at the polls. Our property abuts the probable course of the proposed State Street expansion. I urge our Selectmen to reject the petition. I believe that if you agree to it, you will set a dangerous precedent obligating the town to fund future similar costly projects. 51 of the residents, 51 town residents, about 0.2% of our population, have petitioned the town to reprioritize our public works budget and allocate $100,000 to the State Street sidewalk. Under a strict interpretation of Guilford statutes, this petition could possibly obligate the property owners abutting the extension to a large amount of the construction cost. It is certain that they will obligate these households to the ongoing financial and legal responsibility to maintain and repair the sidewalk, to include snow removal. I'm 72 years old, and I simply don't want to be forced to shovel snow on a sidewalk I neither want nor need. 47 of the petitioners do not live on State Street and will have no financial or legal obligation for this project. We thought it would be useful for you to know just how the affected State Street households felt about the proposal, so we talked to a large number of them. Only 1 of 9 of the households on the east side of the street, which is the probable route, is for the project. Only 2 of 9 on the west side of the street, the alternate route, is for the project. 1 of the original State Street petitioners has now changed their position and opposes the project. Virtually all of the abutting property owners are opposed to this project. Our town has many more important public works projects than this one. There are unfinished sidewalk projects recommended in the 2000 transportation report, as was just alluded to, plus the 2013 Malone and McBroom report calls for major infrastructure improvements to control the flooding problems in the vital areas of our town, to include the town center, I might add. I believe we need to address these projects first. I want to tell you how this project would affect us personally. Our upper driveway is about 10 feet from the road curb. Our well is about 11 feet from the road curb. If you approve the project, you would probably have to take some of our property, and we are concerned that you might damage our well. You would definitely have to chainsaw our privacy trees. We would have to replace them with an out-of-character stockade fence, which would just cost us about $20,000. The privacy trees, which we have cultivated at considerable cost along State Street, provide an excellent natural solution to controlling the dust and noise that State Street traffic generates. We feel our privacy solution is in keeping with the rustic nature of this town along North State Street and our 100-year-old home. I do not sense any selectman would ever want to inflict this kind of hardship on any member of the Guilford community. Accordingly, I hope and expect you will vote no on this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sir, you wanted to make a statement before, and
Yeah, before, you know.
why don't you come up now?
Yeah. Michael Mallinson, 423 State Street.
Did you get that, Trace?
That's, create a hard burden on us. I'm 70 years old too, and as far as me, I only see a couple of pedestrians. I don't see any big activity. You can see if it's a different story. I can see once in a while there's a few other people, but most of the times there's a few. That's all, and then next thing you know, a street lighting me come in, and it'll be a burden on me and my wife, and I think it's a country road. That's why I think she'll leave it. We moved into, here to the country, that was it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak against the project? Yes, ma'am.
So Becky D'Angelo, formerly 505 State Street, now 52 Blow Lane. So about 5 years, it was a town priority to widen this road. And so we lost about 30 feet of frontage on State Street. And so we used to go out onto State Street, but now that those trees, you could now, when you try to drive your car out the driveway, there wasn't enough space between the trees and the road, so now you have to drive into traffic in order to get out of the driveway, which wasn't safe. So we had to move the driveway about 5 years ago at a great expense, like a lot of money. So I just wanted to tell you guys that signed the petition what a huge expense this is going to cause for us. I mean, now not only do we have to move the driveway, so now we're going down onto Tupelo, but now we would have to, get rid of all of those trees, which are beautiful and have taken a lot of effort to nurture. Get rid of them all and replace it with a fence. I mean, I know we all moved to Guilford because it's because it's rural and it's beautiful, and it doesn't have sidewalks partly because it's rural, not because it's a city, but because it's 90% of Guilford doesn't have sidewalks because it wasn't to accommodate cars, it was to accommodate horses, but but anyway. A little bit off topic, but I've read that transportation plan about 5 times, and I think the criteria that I saw were that that sidewalks connect places in the town, right? Like schools. I think the high school was a big one. This one doesn't actually connect anything. I mean, it affords for like 3 or 4 more streets, like 50 houses, to get in, have sidewalks that go sort of to town, but it doesn't. There's nothing on the other side of it. It doesn't like go from a school to a school, which is the town center idea. So it actually doesn't meet that criteria. And I think another one was that it makes it good for visitors. I think that was one of the criteria. Yeah, it was. That people visiting the town, it makes it a more nicer town, like downtown area, and I think the high school. What else? And safety. There were lots of other streets that had more than 13 accidents, like 143 or something on Long Hill or something. But yeah, no, streets are. I mean, it's a. We live in a rural town, so I mean, the kids have to walk on people's lawn, and that's not a horrible thing. I guess that was somebody else's idea, right? Have the kids walk on the lawn next to the street. Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see that it's so hard for kids to walk around on lawns. I know my mom walks 4 miles a day, up and down all of those streets, and to put sidewalks on the entire town. Just because it would theoretically make it safer. I mean, you gotta teach your kids to watch out. I mean, defensively walk against traffic, walk right on the shoulder. People have been doing it for a long time in Guilford, so
okay.
That's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Can I ask Jim a question?
Yeah.
Well, you'll get to finish this part first. Anybody else speak in opposition?
I'm
Yes, sir.
for it, but can I make a comment?
Let's finish. All right. Anybody else would like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
My name is Mike D'Angelo. I live at 123 Meadow Ridge Lane. I'm here tonight because my parents live on the State Street side, and they're both in their 70s. And my concern is that removing snow and ice from the sidewalk will be both a physical and monetary hardship for them. They have over 300 feet of frontage on State Street, and I know everyone who shovels snow in the wintertime at the end of their driveway after the snow plows come, that hard packed snow I know I struggle with 10 feet at the end of my driveway. I can't imagine doing 300 feet, and that's what they have. There were people here tonight that talked about shoveling sidewalks, big snow party, blah, blah, blah. It seems to me that they're not dealing with 300 feet. That's a lot. And a lot of these people on State Street, the frontage that they have is more than the in-town frontage that I think they're referring to. This isn't, small block areas. This is large stretches. And again, the hard-packed snow from the snow plows, it's a tough thing to do, to get rid of that. And just like to also note that the town, after you clear, if you don't clear the snow, they levy fees and fines. I think it's within 24 hours of not having it removed. Additionally, if a sidewalk isn't cleared, I think the liability issue has come up. It's my parents' responsibility to handle any of the damages, or they're liable for any of the damages that result. And as my sister talked about before, the driveway runs parallel to this proposed sidewalk. There's very little room between the driveway and the sidewalk. And the snow removal, there's really nowhere to put it. So after you chainsaw all their trees, put the fence up. The fence will literally need to be right along the sidewalk because there's no room, because you will have to take part of their driveway. They will have to remove the snow by some other means. They're not going to throw it back on State Street. They can't put it over the fence, so they're going to have to cart it out at great expense again to them. Okay? And, as a Guilford resident and taxpayer, I hear people mention the property values going up. I don't live in this area, okay? 99.8% of the people, taxpayers in this town, will not benefit from this, yet they're going to be paying for it, and they're going to be gaining by their property values going up. I don't think that's fair. And again, 50 houses are benefiting. Meanwhile, all these people on State Street are absorbing the costs, the annual maintenance costs, the liability costs. And the people who put forth this proposal aren't, they're not putting anything or spending anything. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else as opposed to the project? On once, twice? All right, closed. Selectman had a question?
One woman said that to straighten State Street, we had to take 30 feet of her property.
No, 3 feet. 3.
Three.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not 30.
We didn't take any.
We wouldn't be set back.
Yeah, 3 is just straight.
Does
Okay.
that clarify
I
the
mean,
issue?
30, then the next question was how much, is a sidewalk gonna take? Okay, that answers.
Wouldn't be on State Street.
For the sake of clarity, all the improvements that were done on State Street were done within the existing right-of-way. We didn't
Right.
acquire land, and because a couple of projects we have had in the last 5 years, we've had to acquire land.
Yeah.
We did on Flag Marsh, we had to acquire land at the Route 1 entrance, and then we had to acquire land up on Hemlock.
I know we're nowhere near design or conceptual or anything if this proceeds, but do you envision a sidewalk like North River where the sidewalk and the curb are next to the road? Or are we envisioning perhaps a grass area and then the sidewalk? And at the max, are we talking 10 feet maybe?
Well, the max would be 10 feet, but, I think would be premature to even comment.
Yeah.
As I said,
It depends on where it is.
I've looked at both sides. I've looked at the east side and the west side, and I think we could accommodate the sidewalk on either side. So it would be site-specific when we got to
Okay.
that point.
Before I close the public, I'm sorry, you done?
No, not really.
Okay, yeah.
The reason I was bringing that part up is that, on North River or other parts where there's sidewalks, is curbing.
Yes,
And obviously, there's no curbing on State Street.
yes,
and-
there is. There's asphalt curbs there.
Oh, there is? Okay.
Yeah. I did get an email from Michael Garvey at 474 today, that he was in favor of it. I just want to put that into the record.
Give to Tracy, you'll add it to the record. Thank you. Before I close the public hearing, sir, you want to make something, comment?
Yeah.
I need to come up and
So my
give your
name is-
name, address, please.
My name is Dan Greif, 49 Oxbow
Okay.
Lane. I guess I just have two or maybe three quick points. First one is, my daughter also goes to Adams Street and she walks down there and it makes me nervous. But when there's a lot of snow out and it gets pushed on the side, walking on People's Street is pretty much impossible because the snow is up so high. So that's really not a tenable thing. I think the number of people that walk on there would certainly increase if there was a sidewalk. So saying there's low numbers, I don't really like that argument. And I guess the final thing is, as a physician at Yale that works in the units and deals with people that have had accidents, I just wonder if this discussion would be different if somebody had had an accident, and it would be nice to be proactive as opposed to be reactive.
Thank you.
Jim, if it was a path, then there's no requirement they shovel, correct?
This discussion, well, Pam could comment on it, look into it.
That's what we have to find out, because really,
When the discussions on the development of the
Yeah.
Shoreline Greenway Trail that
Yeah.
goes through
Yeah.
town to town, this issue was discussed and
Yeah.
supposedly by experts, whoever they are. And that was one of the ways to make the Shoreline Greenway Trail more palatable
Yeah.
to people as it goes through, because it was the same kind of issues that were brought up here.
Yeah.
Long frontages on kind of ruralistic towns. I mean, it's a lot, the gentleman talked about 300 foot. I have a snow blower and I wouldn't want to kind of deal with a 300-foot frontage or 5-foot sidewalk. That'd take not only the effort to do it, but the way you put the snow. It's quite a chore. So that was one of the ways to get around that requirement.
Okay. Since we had one more person speak in favor, I'm going to ask one more person want to speak against. If not, I'll close the public hearing. Yes, sir. This will be the last one.
John Wigman's 490 State Street. Listening to this whole conversation, I don't have 300 feet, I only got 250 feet. And I would be using my snow blower 10 times a night in a snowstorm because the trucks come down, they're going to cover that sidewalk every single trip. And so if we're going to be required to keep them clear, we're not going to get any sleep either. So that's a real negative issue for us who live on State Street. I live on the west side, but it's an area that we have to consider. Thank you.
Any other comments? I want to be fair to everybody. All right?
No, but I'll make a comment.
ahead.
I just, it's not about the specific sidewalk issue as much as it is incumbent upon everybody that drives. We go too fast. People go too fast. It doesn't, no matter where you are, people speed. We all need to take a breath and slow down. I don't know. That's all I've been hearing, is whether it's State Street or Route 1 West about speeders. Somebody approached me and wanted Route 1 to be 35 miles an hour because 45 miles an hour, and they're right, because I've been out there recently. People go too fast. It's just the bottom line. They go too fast on our street, Stam. We know it.
Good thing is they bottom out when they do it.
You know, people just need to slow down.
Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. Since there are no other comments, I'm going to close this public hearing, and we'll move on to the other items on the agenda. Folks are welcome to stay. We're going to continue with our business, but if you're not staying, thank you very much for your comments and participation.
Thanks for coming out.
Okay, we'll hold up for a minute for the crowd. Pam, thank you.
No speeding.